The UFC is back in what seems to be maybe a yearly tradition at this point, as last June we saw them at UFC 302 headlining the Prudential Center with Islam Makhachev versus Dustin Poirier, and 1 year later, nearly to the day, we are seeing two championship fights at the top of the bill. We will be seeing a rematch 9 months in the making between Merab Dvalishvili on a 12-fight win streak and Sean O'Malley with a brand new hip. Not literally, but a fixed ligament in his hip. And the co-main event will be the grudge match in the women's bantamweight division, as Julianna Pena will finally be able to get her hands on Kayla Harrison, the former Olympic gold medalist, the former PFL champion. Now she will look to become UFC champion, plus a plethora of other great fights on this card as well. But we start with the two fights that will have gold on the line, and the rematch is on deck: Merab Dvalishvili and Sean O'Malley. There might not be a more fitting nickname in all of the Ultimate Fighting Championship than The Machine for Merab Dvalishvili, who enters UFC 316 looking to successfully defend his Bantamweight Championship that he took from Sean O'Malley last September at Noche UFC for the second time. Yes, both guys in this main event have stayed active since their first fight, but in completely different ways. For Merab, he would go on to just a few months later in January of this year, the first pay-per-view of 2025, UFC 311 in Los Angeles at the Intuit Dome, go in and put on a show in the co-main event where he would defend his championship for the first time against Umar Nurmagomedov, and in the same breath handed Umar the first loss of his entire career. It seems that at 34 years old, Merab Dvalishvili is in his prime right now, and he is running through the competition, and at this point, he's getting ready to lap the competition should he beat Sean O'Malley for a second time this Saturday. And what's crazy is his most dominant, most impressive performances have come against the best fighters throughout this 12-fight win streak. Let's just go back to when it began, at least the most impressive part of it, in September of 2021, and that is when the title challengers and former champions begin on the resume as well. He had the fight with Marlon Moraes where he damn near got finished brutally, may I add, in the first round of that fight before having one of the best comebacks of all of 2021 and finish Marlon Moraes in the second round, who was a former title challenger. Then he would go on to beat Jose Aldo, former bantamweight title challenger and longtime reigning featherweight champion. Then he would beat Petr Yan, former bantamweight champion. Then he would beat former two-weight world champion Henry Cejudo, who also had an Olympic gold medal to his name as well. He takes the title from Sean O'Malley and then hands Umar Nurmagomedov the first loss of his career. That resume right there, those 6 consecutive fights back to back to back, are absolutely unbelievable. And for that reason, that is why a lot of the conversations going around this week as we near closer to the weekend is the question of, is Merab Dvalishvili the best bantamweight of all time? And it's hard to say he isn't with a resume like that, paired with 6 other wins prior to that, 12 in a row, the longest ever in the bantamweight division's history, 92 takedowns, the most takedowns in every single division ever for the UFC. He is at the top of the mountain in numerous categories and still getting better fight by fight. I think the biggest thing from Merab is that his fight IQ is improving fight by fight. He's making better decisions. He's keeping himself out of harm's way, like a couple of times we've seen him not do. See the aforementioned fight with Marlon Moraes. So to not only be able to add all of these wrinkles to his game and evolve with the rest of the division and continue to better his skill set, he's doing it while fighting the other best fighters in the world, who are all essentially in their primes when he fought them outside of Jose Aldo. And while the scorecards back at Noche UFC between Merab and Sean read pretty close, a 49-46 and 2 48-47s, it just didn't feel that close, did it? Because when we look at the stats from the fight, Merab Dvalishvili outlanded Sean O'Malley 214 to 49. On top of that, he landed 6 successful takedowns, had 10 minutes of control time, and pretty much got the better of Sean anywhere that the fight went. However, Sean O'Malley had those big moments, right? See that moment in round number 5 where he landed to the body of Merab, and had he been able to press on the gas and had a little bit more time in that 5th, and maybe, just maybe, Sean O'Malley retains his title that night. But we're not playing the what-if game. We're going by the facts, and it's that Merab Dvalishvili, in my opinion, dominated that fight outside of what? 10 strikes total that were significant for Sean. And when I say significant, not the actual 47 significant, but I'm saying like fight-altering potential shots. I mean, let's be real. If a guy is kissing his opponent in their fight, it can't be that close, right? And heading into this weekend, Merab Dvalishvili is on the record saying,
I already kissed him. Now it's time to smash him.
What do you mean by that?
But in all seriousness, 9 months later, what can Sean O'Malley do differently in this fight? Because in my opinion, the only thing that is truly different from a physical standpoint is the hip of Sean O'Malley, because as we all know, he went in to that fight as the champion last September with a torn labrum, with surgery already scheduled to take place, win or lose, on that night. And we've learned that Sean O'Malley said that in the training camp, due to the hip injury and the ligament damage, he was unable to put a lot of emphasis in the grappling. And when you're fighting Merab, that better be what you're focusing on most. So in this second training camp for Merab, 9 months later, with a hip that has been healed, and an all-new mindset, it seems, for Sean O'Malley. No more jaying off the rod, as he says. No more social media. No more marijuana. He's cleaning up his life. He's dialing in on things that mean the most to him. He said he's put the character of Suga Show to the side, and he's being Sean O'Malley. And he's 30 years old right now, in those prime years. He's the bigger man, 5 inches taller, 4 inches longer in terms of reach. Can he take advantage of his physical gifts with his fight-altering power that he carries in his hands and make the proper adjustments to take on Merab Dvalishvili, to take out Merab Dvalishvili and regain the throne that he once sat at the top of? It's going to be very interesting to see how Sean O'Malley reacts and if it is at all different than how he did in September. Can he fend off Merab Dvalishvili and do better in the takedown defense, even though if you look at the number, he defended 9 out of 15. But it's not only the takedowns, it's the pressing forward nature of Merab, where he puts Sean O'Malley on the back foot, where he presses him up against the fence, and even when he's not taking him down, he's holding him there in the clinch and getting shots off. Can Sean O'Malley keep the fight at a distance, utilize his long limbs and his striking and maybe his improved takedown defense to get an edge in this fight that he did not have, truthfully, at all in that first one, outside of those few big shots we've already talked about? Because yes, while I've said Merab has cleaned up his game and his fight IQ continues to grow, he has been vulnerable and suspect to getting landed on that chin of his. Not to mention that body shot that Sean landed in the 5th round of their first fight was beautiful. So can he time more body work to help chip away at the gas tank of Merab that never even gets close to empty? My guy doesn't even get close to half empty, if I'm being honest. And just in general, can Sean O'Malley utilize more kicks and teep kicks, maybe even right in the middle to the body? Can he take out the legs of Merab, or will he be too hesitant to do so because of the threat of the takedown? Merab is just such a unique puzzle to figure out because he is so good at the wrestling and at the grappling. He's so persistent and he just never gets tired, and it's so hard for his opponents to properly game plan and, more importantly, adjust as the fight goes on round by round, because Merab only gets stronger. I think that if Sean O'Malley wins this fight, it's going to say a lot about his mindset that he's alluding to in the lead up to this fight, and I think it's going to say a lot about his game planning and his own evolution of his skill sets and mindset heading into this fight. He's going to have to pitch a near perfect performance, in my opinion, to beat Merab, because Merab doesn't have to be perfect when he has the grit, toughness, and durability that he has behind him. But for Sean, he's going to have to keep the fight on the feet. He's going to have to keep it at a distance. He's going to have to find the perfect shot to land to put Merab away. Otherwise, he will not stop pressing forward. And if you want to talk pressure, even though Merab is the champion and his belt is on the line, doesn't it feel that there is all eyes and attention on Sean O'Malley? Yes, of course, he's one of the biggest stars in the UFC, and that loss to Merab didn't do too much to hinder his stock. But now, again, getting a title shot, a title shot that arguably isn't even deserved for Sean O'Malley if he loses here and drops as a title challenger this time. He doesn't even lose the belt. He loses his opportunity to regain the belt. He loses 2 consecutive fights, both to the man at the top of the mountain. He falls well down the totem pole, in my opinion, and maybe makes his way up to featherweight a little bit sooner than he's saying leading into this fight. He says he still has a few more fights to go at bantamweight, win or lose this weekend, but if he loses here, it's going to be hard for him to re-enter title contention, at least for the near future. So will Merab Dvalishvili defend his title for a second time by beating Sean O'Malley for a second time, or can Sean O'Malley become a 2-time champion by stopping the machine in his 12-fight win streak that he enters UFC 316 on in Merab Dvalishvili? I want to hear from you down in the comments below on the lead up to this fight. What do you make of Sean O'Malley's approach mentally, physically being repaired now with his hip? What do you make of Merab in his title reign thus far, paired with all of the names that he's stacking into his resume? Is he the GOAT bantamweight already? Is he the GOAT should he beat Sean O'Malley? Does he still have a few more names to add to the list to catch Dominic Cruz? Let me know all of your thoughts on the storylines for both of these men heading into UFC 316 in the comments below, along with your bets if you plan to make some money off of this main event, and your predictions. And now that we are done with the main event title fight, let's jump into the co-main event title fight. Bad blood. Julianna Pena, Kayla Harrison, the women's bantamweight championship is on the line, and maybe a potential fight with the GOAT too. The Venezuelan vixen Julianna Pena is back, and she is ready to defend her second championship for the first time. She's never been able to successfully defend her title, although she is a 2-time champion. Now, can she add that notch to her resume? And to do so, she will have to take out Kayla Harrison. Julianna enters this fight after beating Raquel Pennington for the championship at UFC 307 last October, where she would earn a split decision in a very, very competitive, back-and-forth, close fight. That I felt, honestly, you could have scored for Raquel Pennington just as easy as you did for Julianna, but regardless, she is the 2-time bantamweight champion of the world. The only other person to say they've done that in this weight class is Amanda Nunes, the GOAT herself. And since the pair of fights that Julianna had with Amanda in December of 2021, where she pulled off one of the greatest upsets in UFC history, and then the rematch in July of 2022, where Amanda Nunes would dominate her way back to reclaiming her title, Julianna has literally only fought once since then, and it was the fight in October of 2024 against Raquel Pennington. And in that same timeline, from December of 2021 to the very same night Julianna reclaimed her throne at UFC 307 last October, Kayla Harrison has fought 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times and only suffered defeat once, and that was in her 2022 championship bout against Larissa Pacheco, where she had the opportunity to become a 3-time PFL champion, but Larissa, much like Julianna did against Amanda Nunes, would shock the world and become the first person to ever beat Kayla Harrison. But for Julianna Pena, the thing that keeps her in relevancy is her mouth and her way to build fights in the pre-fight build, in the press conferences, on social media, and everything in between. That is the exact reason why she was able to get a championship fight last October after a year and a half, nearly 2 years away from the cage without fighting a single time. And should she beat Kayla Harrison and become the first person to beat her inside of the UFC octagon, her talking may just be able to get the GOAT Amanda Nunes to come back out of retirement for the trilogy fight. But it's not just Julianna that has a storyline potential with Amanda Nunes in the aftermath of UFC 316, because it's Kayla Harrison just as much. Kayla Harrison, Ohio zone, I'm an Ohio guy, so there is definitely a little bit of bias here. I'm just going to be fully transparent, much like there is for my guy Stipe Miocic. However, I see the threat that Julianna Pena poses. But for Kayla Harrison, a 2-time Olympic gold medalist in judo, the only person to ever have that accolade from the United States, a 2-time PFL women's lightweight champion, 18-1 overall, 2-0 now in the UFC, and if she becomes the UFC champion this weekend at UFC 316, she could maybe be the greatest combat sports athlete that we have ever seen. Someone else in that conversation is Henry Cejudo, who was not a 2-time gold medalist, but he was a 1-time gold medalist and a 2-weight world champion in the UFC. So Kayla can do a 2-time champion in the PFL, a 2-weight world champion across PFL and UFC, and 2 gold medals at the Olympics. I'd say that puts her a notch ahead of Cejudo. Not to mention her story and how she has gotten herself to where she is today at 34 years old, being a sexual assault survivor, fighting her way out of depression, becoming a mother to her niece and nephew, following some dark days for her family. She has all of the characteristics to make herself one of the biggest stars, not only in women's mixed martial arts, but in the entire UFC and in all of the mixed martial arts world. I mean, after all, she was the face of the PFL for multiple years. Who's to say she can't become the face of women's mixed martial arts for the worldwide leader that is the UFC? And she's no stranger to building up fights in her own right, going right back at Julianna Pena in the trash-talking sector. And she has a skill set that no one really has right now in the rest of the UFC. Her judo skills to take her opponents down to that mat. And when she gets them there, she is dangerous, and she is absolutely strong as an ox. But for what it's worth, when she had to dig deep into those round 4 and round 5 moments against Larissa Pacheco, Kayla Harrison wasn't able to pull it out and become the victor. But what has Julianna Pena showed time and time again? That she can dig deep, that she can outdog her opponents, and even in losing efforts like her rematch with Amanda Nunes, she will not go away. You truly have to put her out. So if she can have that pressure and that dog mentality and that mindset against Kayla Harrison and push her into rounds 3, round 4, round 5, things all of a sudden could get very, very interesting. But can she get it there? Because she is going to be the weaker quote-unquote opponent when compared to Kayla Harrison, who may just be the strongest woman in the entire UFC. But it's not just the brute strength of Kayla that gets her opponents down to the ground. It's that strength paired with her incredible technique in that judo realm and the unique style that she has to get her opponents down. And now that she's able to use elbows in the UFC, she showed that her skills on the ground really were never on full display in the PFL, and we've gotten to see them through her first 2 fights in the UFC, a stoppage win over Holly Holm, the former champion, and a pretty convincing decision over Ketlen Vieira, who currently sits at number 3 in the world. And as I already said, it's not just Julianna that has a storyline with Amanda Nunes, it is also Kayla Harrison, because they were teammates at American Top Team. They helped each other become champions in their respective promotions. When Amanda Nunes was on top of the world in the UFC, Kayla Harrison was right there next to her in the practice room, getting her in shape and getting her ready to go. And the same can be said for Kayla when she was becoming a 2-time champion in the PFL. Amanda Nunes was right there to assist her and help her reach the pinnacle of that promotion. And then Amanda Nunes separated from American Top Team. She went to start her own gym, and many rumors were swirling around that part of the reason was because of Kayla Harrison, because of all of the attention that she was garnering, winning the titles in the PFL, for her potentially becoming a free agent and joining the UFC, and her never truly shutting down the idea of having to maybe fight Amanda Nunes one day in the future. So all of that tension coming to here at UFC 316. Will we see Amanda Nunes in the front row of this fight? That might be my favorite question to ask of all of these fights and all of the previews I'm going to do. And if Amanda Nunes is in fact front row on Saturday night at UFC 316, will she come out of retirement for either a trilogy fight with Julianna Pena or a fight of all fights in terms of magnitude with Kayla Harrison? Just think about the storylines for both of those, right? Julianna lures Amanda Nunes out of retirement for their 3rd fight against one another. Julianna, one of the biggest upsets of all time when she dethroned Amanda Nunes. Then Amanda came back, destroyed her in the rematch, would go on to defend her title one more time before retiring. The former 2-weight world champion in Amanda Nunes, or it's her, the Lioness, versus Kayla Harrison, 2-time gold medalist, 2-weight world champion across 2 different promotions, 3 total championships around her waist, and former friend and teammate. It doesn't get better than that for women's mixed martial arts from a storyline perspective if we're talking getting personal, because if you want to go X's and O's and legacy, there is one fight that would rival these, and that's Zhang Weili versus Valentina Shevchenko. Can you imagine a world where we potentially see both of those within the same few months as one another? We would be eating good. And I just have to say this really quick to bring it all together. As we're done with the preview of Kayla versus Julianna, we've talked about the potential of Amanda Nunes coming out of retirement. I just briefly mentioned the potential of Zhang Weili versus Valentina Shevchenko. So let me talk to you here for a second. Let's say that Amanda Nunes comes out of retirement. She fights the winner, regardless of if it's Kayla or Julianna, and she beats them to become a 3-time champion in the bantamweight division after years away in retirement. Then let's say we see Valentina Shevchenko versus Zhang Weili coming up to 125, and Valentina halts that momentum of Zhang Weili. She sends her back down to 115 with another loss on her record. Valentina retains her flyweight title, and then Amanda Nunes gets another trilogy fight, this time against Valentina Shevchenko, the 2-time flyweight champion, coming back to her original home of 135 pounds for one last go-round. Amanda Nunes, the new bantamweight champion, 3 times over, versus Valentina Shevchenko, the 2-time flyweight champion, for all of the marbles, for that world title record in the UFC, and for the bantamweight championship of the world. I'm getting too far ahead of myself. We haven't even seen Kayla versus Julianna, but a guy can dream, right? I want to hear all of your thoughts down below on that wild scenario that I just painted and your predictions for Kayla Harrison versus Julianna Pena. Kayla, a massive favorite, mind you, coming in as north of a -600. Julianna as the champion on the comeback around +450. What do you make of those odds? Are they disrespectful to Julianna, or are the odds makers getting it right? And can Kayla Harrison continue to reign as the queen of the women's bantamweight division? So that is it for the title fight previews for UFC 316, the rematch between Merab and Sean O'Malley, the grudge match between Kayla Harrison and Julianna Pena. Give me all of your thoughts and your predictions for both of those fights and what you see happening in the aftermath of UFC 316 down below. If you enjoyed this preview, please be sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new, as we are on the road to reaching 1,000 subscribers, hopefully before the end of 2025 if all goes to plan, and any and all support would greatly be appreciated. On top of previewing and breaking down the best storylines and what is at stake each weekend, I also recap the most meaningful results in the aftermath of each card, and I give my thoughts and opinions on MMA news and fight announcements. You can also join the community on social media at Verbal Spar MMA on X, Instagram, and TikTok, and you can follow on your favorite audio listening platforms such as Spotify and Apple, where every Monday and Friday podcast episodes are released there. Have a great weekend, enjoy the fights, and I will see you all in the next video.